Welcome to Close Up Radio, where our hosts, Doug Llewellyn and Jim Masters, bring you the amazing stories of people who answered the call to unlock their potential and taken control of their own success with authenticity, creativity, persistence, and resilience. Close Up Radio special guests share their knowledge and wisdom so you, the listener, can live the most empowered life possible. Close Up Radio. And now, here's today's host, Jim Masters.
Thank you so very much for joining us, everybody. We're live worldwide on Close Up Radio, which is a service of the Telly Award-winning Close Up Television and Radio. A pleasure to have you here. I am your host, Jim Masters, 3 p.m. Eastern, at noon Pacific. And our very special guest today is Dorothea Gordon, who is coming to us live and direct from Vancouver Island on the northwest coast of beautiful Canada. She's a retired high school teacher for foreign languages, but also a handwriting analyst and an alternative health practitioner and a dream builder life coach. She's written an exciting new book called When Life Has Other Plans, Discover the Hidden Gifts, which we'll hear about in the course of our ongoing conversation. Won't you join me in welcoming Dorothea to Close Up Radio for our enlightening and inspiring conversation. Dorothea, welcome to the show. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you, Jim, for being my host and giving me this opportunity to share some information about myself and my memoir with our listeners.
You are very, very welcome. And, you know, I'm fascinated by what makes people tick, what motivates them, what inspires them. Take us a little bit maybe on your journey and a little bit about your story that pointed you in the direction of realizing you love alternative health and energy medicine, and it's something that you really wanted to do and practice. What are some of the things that inspired you along the way to realize that, Dorothea?
Well, I grew up in Bavaria, Germany, as you may hear from my accent, and I saw a lot of suffering there, but there wasn't much medication, so people treated things with herbs and laying on of hands and poultices and things like that, and I thought that was very interesting. And then also, when my father was very sick, they gave him too many medications, and he, in the end, died not of his illness, but of the poisoning from the medication. So I was very much determined that I would not be using that approach. But in those days, I didn't really know very much about alternative medicine. I had to go all the way from Bavaria to Canada in order to be introduced to this new way of dealing with illness. And I had gone to Boulder, Colorado on a scholarship to study English and American culture. And there I met 3 guys, or in Mexico, where I was also improving my Spanish. I met 3 guys from Vancouver Island. And to make a long story short, I married one of them and ended up in Canada. And then through all sorts of guidance, and I call my story one of guidance, I found out about energy healing, and I took a course, and 6 months into it, I met the mother of one of my son's friends, and she said, she had a malignant growth in her breast that had to come out, and she was quite worried. So I said, all right, come to my house and I'll give you a treatment to prepare you for the operation, to make it smoother and so on. And while she was skeptical, she showed up anyway, and I spent an hour and a half on her, and the next day she went in to have her operation. Except she phoned me and she said, during the pre-op exam, they couldn't find the lump anymore, and they said, well, we can't cut out what's not there, go home. So we were both very surprised, and I phoned my teacher, my energy healing teacher, and said, what's this all about? And she said, well, it's a sign from the universe that it wants to work with you. And you don't work like a doctor that you wanted to become at one time, but you will work with natural and regenerative and non-invasive tools. So
Amazing. Really, really is.
Yeah.
You know, and out of that passion and inspiration, Dorothea, you created Dorotheas TLC. Tell us about that and some of the wonderful work that you do.
Well, through my business, I call it Dorotheas TLC, which can also stand for Tender Loving Care. I help people who want to try out non-invasive and regenerative approaches to healing. Because I was taught that many ailments are connected to a stressful lifestyle and a negative way of thinking, as well as the impact our environment has on us. So what I learned was that complaining, resenting, criticizing, anger, self-hatred, and so on have been found to create imbalance in the body. And I can often see a connection between the aches and pains that folks present and their frame of mind. Well, of course, when I point that out, some can see that they brought their troubles on themselves, but others reject that possibility. Why? Because then they'd have to make changes in their lives and they are afraid or in denial, or some of them I've noticed are just plain lazy. People can be so addicted to their stress hormones that they have to produce more and more of them until the body says, okay, enough, I need some rest. And then sometimes the body creates an illness or accident or emotional trauma and forces us to pay attention. So the interesting thing, because I'm also a very spiritual person, is that after a while, those clients who are changing their old belief system and are embracing what I call a spiritual awakening tend to get better. Whereas the others come back time and again complaining, well, they can't see any difference and they're still in pain. So I tell them, you know, if you keep doing what you've been doing, you'll keep getting what you've been getting, and it's your choice. So one of the fascinating aspects of my vocation is that I can work with people long distance as well. You know, during the treatment, I use my skills as an energy medicine practitioner to support their body's innate healing abilities. We all have that. I remove old stagnant energy and fill it with new clean energy and balance chakras for better energy absorption. But I also remind people they have to become aware of the role they play. Like I feed my clients knowledge to help them create a more empowering lifestyle. And to paraphrase the Bible, give a man a fish and he'll become dependent on you, but teach him how to fish and he can take care of himself. So that's not a good principle for repeat business, but I'm okay with it.
Yes, which is really the key, and that's what it's all about. Talking about energy healing and how it can improve one's life in such extraordinary ways, I'd like to expand a little bit, if we can, Dorothea, on how you feel energy healing has really improved your life.
Well, first of all, I have to say that I don't have any pain medication in my house, none whatsoever. I treat my aches and pains first through energy infusion, which is the technique I use, and then I reach for the laser acupuncture device. It's called auricular laser ear acupuncture because it's a little device that's attached to a machine that creates the energy, and the device looks like a pen, and at the top tip it has an opening where the laser comes out, or the laser ray comes out very strongly, and then I only touch the points on the ear that are connected to the meridians. Meridians are energy pathways. And that way, when there are blockages, the laser powerfully either removes them or breaks through the barriers, and people have had just amazing results. Like, it's a beautiful and painless job, which further supports the energy flow, and then it heals the affected areas. And in my case, when I catch it soon enough, my problems often disappear overnight. So I also, at the same time, practice emotional hygiene, where I observe my thoughts and avoid negative people, and I'm careful of what I read or watch on TV, because all that affects our way of thinking and creates a mood that then can have an impact on our well-being. So I try to live what I preach, but I must admit I'm not always that successful.
That's because you're human, right? You're human, exactly. We're all human.
Yes, I know I'm also a spirit, but yeah.
Well, and this leads beautifully to the question that I had in mind. In your experience, what effect do our thoughts actually have on our reality?
Well, they have a major effect. And, especially now during the pandemic, we could see how the media caused terror and fear in people and made things worse for some of them, because that's all they hang on to. Read the stuff and imagine that would happen to them. And there's a lot of work. People, as I said, get addicted to their stress hormones, and they need to have more and more negative information. So it can really affect the body. And then, of course, the opposite is true. When you start to become aware of all the things that are working in your life, that are good in your life, that you're grateful for, you create a very different energy around you, and that attracts in itself more good things. People are not aware that what they think about and what they focus on brings back more of the same. So I practice great gratitude and appreciation and meditation, because those are avenues for the universe to speak to us positively and give us the information that we need in order to thrive. And that's basically what I'm trying to do with my clients. I help them thrive. But there is a bit of effort involved, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. There's something else that I find really fascinating, is the fact that you've studied handwriting analysis. First, define a little bit for us of what that actually is. Maybe we've seen people do it on TV or what have you. We think we know what it is, but from your expertise, what is it really? And tell us about how you studied it and how it enhances what you do.
Oh, I'm really now in my subject. Handwriting is actually brain writing. People don't realize that it presents a graphic picture of the state our brain is in at the time of writing. For instance, when we are angry or drunk, our handwriting looks different from writing we produce when we're happy. Just look at your own handwriting and notice how it has changed over the course of your life. And, it just shows that you have changed as well. So to answer your question, how did I get involved in that? Well, I thought it would be a very helpful tool for a teacher, and not so much now because they don't teach handwriting anymore, which is a terrible loss, which I won't go into because otherwise I'll get too excited. But anyway, in my case, at university I had some friends who were studying psychology and had to take a handwriting analysis, or graphology it was called, course as a complementary assessment tool. And when they did my handwriting, I was very intrigued because it was quite right. So I also knew that I was moving to Canada and would need the vocabulary in English. So when I got to Vancouver Island, per chance, I met someone who directed me to the International Graphoanalysis Society in Chicago, which has excellent and well-researched material. So I decided to take a 2-year course with them because there was no internet available at the time. It had to be done by snail mail. And I actually graduated 2 weeks before my daughter was born, so I couldn't jump into it right away. But once I was back at school, my new skill helped me a lot with my students to assess their strengths or weaknesses and find out where I could help them. Some parents even approached me to find out what their children should choose for careers because they wanted them to be academics, but the kids had no interest. They wanted to be a carpenter or something like that. And often in the handwriting, you could see that they had great manual dexterity. So it was very rewarding for me to help steer those kids into a direction where they could use their innate talent. And then I also worked for companies who wanted to hire suitable and compatible employees to stop the turnover, which is very expensive, as you know. And there's a little story on the side. One day a lady showed up with 3 handwritten letters from men who wanted to date her, because in the olden days, there was no online dating. You had to answer the personals in the newspaper and send a handwritten letter. So after I had analyzed those 3 letters, I told her I wouldn't bother with any of them because their handwriting showed hostility, bossiness, dishonesty, and a few other things which could become deal breakers. So needless to say, she was very grateful. Then I decided to also train in questions, documents, examination work, which deals with forgeries or poison pen letters and disputed signatures. And it has nothing to do with personality, but I simply have to compare suspect writing with known samples. And you can sometimes see it in movies. They find a piece of paper from a kidnapper or something half burnt in the ashes, and they say, oh, we have to submit that to a handwriting expert so we can find out a bit more. But handwriting analysis was actually the stepping stone which put me on a completely different path. I became in a research project about regressions into past lives, and I experienced a major paradigm shift in my philosophy.
That's fantastic. That's exciting. You know, past life, really, really is. I find all of this very, very fascinating. Past life regression, too. Tell us about that. For the audience listening, for maybe hearing these terms for the first time, what are past life regressions, and what did you learn from them, Dorothea?
Past life regressions are attempts to move into a part of our psyche which remembers that we have lived before. And it's a bit on the metaphysical side on the one hand, but we also have renowned professors of psychology and psychiatry who use that tool, and very successfully, because often you get patients who do not respond to medicines or talk therapy, and then you mesmerize them or hypnotize them, and you can access so-called past lives, which bring up a lot of information which may not make sense to the listener, but often makes sense to the person who is going through that experience. I mean, I went through it myself, and it was just amazing. But in order to explain to you how I got involved with that, was that I put an ad in the newspaper and said I was available as a handwriting expert, anybody interested. So a psychology student from the University of Victoria phoned me and said that he had a research project going, which he called Is There Life Before Life, which was actually an idea to me at the time, because I only knew that there might be life after life. So that young man introduced me to a regressionist, and we then looked for volunteers. And what my task was that I analyzed the present-day handwriting of the volunteers to see if their handwriting would change after they'd been regressed into a former life. So those folks were lying on a couch, and we'd give them a clipboard with paper and ask them to write something. And I have to say that we put them in a state of deep mental and emotional relaxation so they could access that kind of information, because you can't access that with your beta brainwaves during the day. You have to be in a special kind of setup brainwaves. So that's what we did before that. And then we also asked them to describe their character in that particular past life that they found themselves in. So they wrote with their eyes closed and had no idea how they would have to change their writing, so it would represent their personality, let's say, as an angry sea captain, or a gentle poet, or a lawyer, or an aristocrat. But of course, some incarnations didn't produce writing because the characters were illiterate. They lived in the jungle or in the woods somewhere and couldn't do any writing. But anyway, I mentioned that I did my own regression afterwards, and it revealed many parallels to my present life. Like in that past life, I had to move from Italy to England, and in this life, I had to move from Bavaria to Canada. So it seems like I didn't learn my lesson in the first time around, and had to come back into a similar life situation this time. So it's just like in school. If you fail your tests, you have to do your lessons over again. So after the regressions, we asked the participants, what they had become aware of during the regression whilst they were in that altered state. And they mentioned that many of the people that they knew in this life now, they had also known in the past life. And many of the present-day talents that they had their origins in their past life. So, all these musical geniuses and these amazing people, many of their talents started maybe some time long ago. And then we had one lady who was able to find an address from a recent incarnation, and she wrote to the town where she had lived and received a copy of her own death certificate. No, that all blew our minds. But what we also learned from past life regressions was that we're energy forms which change but never perish. For instance, that we are born, or that before we are born, we choose our parents. Now, you can't blame your parents for anything anymore because you chose them. Partners, siblings, relatives, and those people are often our greatest teachers. We may not get along with them, but we have to stretch and work on ourselves in order to grow. We even choose our countries of origin, our careers, and even accidents, because accidents are often opportunities for growth. So we design our life experiences just like an architect designs a blueprint for a house. So the structures are there, and all we get to say is, okay, the wall colors, the floors, the windows, and so on. But some of the structures are set in their ways.
Really fascinating. It really, really is. We've got probably, I'd say about 4 minutes or so left to our show, but maybe you could slip in a little bit about some of the, and then we'll talk about your book, paranormal experiences that you've had. What kind have you had?
Oh, I've had quite a few. There was one opportunity, or one occasion, I should say, where I was swimming in a lake and I thought I was drowning and really just cried out to the universe for help. And next thing I know, a little boat comes up with a man who says, "Oh, would you like me to pull you out?" And I said, "Yeah, please." And so I hung on to the boat and he rowed me out. And then as I step ashore, I turn around to thank him, and he's gone. The boat's gone, the man's gone, nobody there. So that was a bit surprising, but I was already more familiar with these kinds of philosophies and attitudes. And then I had a similar experience where I had to go through a very difficult operation, and I had befriended the nurse who was in that ICU room a few months before that on a dog walk, and she just happened to be on that day, and I was going into shock because I had lost so much blood, and she was the one who noticed that I had stopped breathing, and she was also the one who yelled, "Come, breathe, breathe," and brought me back because I was already in the tunnel to the other side. So those are two of my experiences, and I write a lot more about it in the book.
The book, When Life Has Other Plans, Discover the Hidden Gifts. Tell us about that. Great title.
Yeah. Thank you. because it so applies to me, because it's the eventful story of my own life, where my own life had other plans for me than I had for myself as a young woman. You know, I had no desire to emigrate to North America, and I would have been happy to stay home, and I would not knowingly have put myself into the path of the emotional truck that hit me when I left home, because, you know, there was so much adversity. It was almost like it was seeking me out. There was culture shock after immigration, marriage problems, a physically handicapped child, and then came divorce, a nervous breakdown, cancer, and a stroke. So they were all important turning points where I had to go through inner transformations to be able to live with myself. And I had to face my own negativity and do something about it. So the book also speaks about my slow spiritual awakening and how I was guided to the right situations, people, and information. So I would learn my lesson and gain my wisdom. And so when I mention all these adversities and hardships, I'm not saying that the whole book is full of woe is me stuff. There are lots of funny situations, like the one about the host in Florida who liked to move around in see-through net-like underwear while I was staying at his house. So that was kind of funny. But at the end of each episode, and that's important, I describe the gift I received from my challenge, each of my challenges. For instance, example, you know, having a handicapped child generated a lot of compassion in me for people who have disabilities of any kind, or losing my mother, and the energy messages she sent after her death told me, you know, that a soul lives on, and also realizing that I cannot prevent others from having to go through painful life lessons, and so on. So it's a very informative book. It's easily readable, but people have told me don't start reading it I started reading it at night, and I spent I lost some of my sleep because I couldn't put it down. I had to know how it ended, and that's the kind of book you want.
Exactly. An inspirational memoir of how you overcame your endless challenges by tapping into universal laws to thrive, and tells the many unusual events which led you to awaken to all the gifts life had been offering you, and once you were able to see them, you were able to grasp them beautifully. I do want to let folks know that the book, again, is titled When Life Has Other Plans, Discover the Hidden Gifts, and that's available at Amazon. You can go to Amazon. And also, if you'd like to connect with our very special guest, Dorothea Gordon of Dorotheas TLC, you can go to the website, www.D, that's the letter D, then the letter T, the letter L, and the letter C, and it's .ca, which of course is for Canada. That's www.dtlc.ca. Dorothea, this was very inspiring, enlightening, and you're very passionate about what you do. You love what you do, and you're helping so many others through your own experiences and through your expertise. I hope we get a chance to explore and expand some more, maybe hear success stories as well. It would be a pleasure. But this was wonderful, and I hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you on Close Up Radio today.
Absolutely, Jim, and I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I also thank the listeners out there, and I'm sending them many blessings.
Right back at you, Dorothea. Really a blessing to have an opportunity to chat with you. And again, I hope we do have the opportunity to do it again real soon. Dorothea Gordon, a ray of sunshine for so many, and hopefully for you today as well. Thanks to Dorothea, and thanks to you. I'm your host, Jim Masters, thanking you for your time this time. Till next time, inviting you to stay right there. I'll be back momentarily with another amazing guest from around the world here on Close Up Radio. Till then, for all of us, have a terrific day. And bye for now.